Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So, just when I think New Mexico is a dumpster fire and that we need to look at, or I need to look at, not we, I need to look at leaving New Mexico because, holy crap, we just fought off all the crap that's been going on. We made it through another session in the roundhouse where we still have some semblance of our 2A rights. Some leftist hellhole, in this case Washington State, exhibits some things that makes me go, holy crap, I'm glad I'm not there. The same state that brought you the CHOP. This was a zone that was kind of in the ANCAP vein, but they totally split off from the United States, according to them. And the state, and I mean the government of Washington and the government of the United States, allowed this to happen. But from that same state, and the state that tells you don't need a gun, we got you, and that guns are the problem, is willing to go to epic levels of hell to deprive you of your rights. So if you haven't heard what's going on in Washington State has a modern gun ban that is written in such a way that there's thousands of guns now banned completely. There's no way around the bans. They're named by type, not by name, so not by individual brands. For instance, they say the AK-47 in all variants. Okay. The AK-74, the AR-15, and they don't talk about any of the variants for it either. They just ban them all. But this one went as far as it bans accessories or guns that can accept certain types of accessories. For instance, you have a threaded barrel in the modern age where you have a muzzle brake or a muzzle flash hider, or God forbid you have a suppressor. Those are explicitly banned. This gun ban goes so far as to say anything under 30 inches is banned. Now, this is a state's rights issue, and the state has the right to do this, unfortunately. However, there is a warning here about places like New Mexico that we need to think about. If you go so far, one political party or the other, you end up with situations like this. And this is heartbreaking that these people are losing their rights. So you can go to websites right now, like one of my favorites I mention all the time on here is Palmetto State Armory, and you'll see that priority orders are happening for anyone in Washington State. That's because their House and their Senate have now passed the same bill, basically, and it's going to be signed by the governor. And the only way that the people of Washington are going to get out of this is if they get behind some serious legislation and there's enough people to say no, and get some legislation in that's in their favor. Because they've written this thing explicitly going after modern guns of any kind. If they accept a detachable magazine, gone. And it's kind of ambiguous about how it relates to pistols or shotguns, but it looks like it's the same vein. And until someone like GOA, the NRA, FPC get in there and get something done in that state, it's not going to happen. Meaning there's no freedom that's going to happen. These people are going to have to live with this. And the way this law is written is you cannot transfer your firearms after you pass away, so people can't inherit your firearms. New Mexico, at least we crafted that in the stuff that went on with the background check stuff that we did recently with the red flag laws and all the other crap. It was the last session or a session before last, not this last one. But it's still depressing to think that these guys that allowed something so anarchic as the CHOP. And while you would think that an anarchist like myself, or an ANCAP, thinks that the CHOP would be a great idea, I don't see that is how it's going to go down. What's going to end up eventually happening, in my assessment, is that there's going to be enough of us people in our vein that say we're tired of having the state, the big enchilada, the big government involved in our lives. And we're going to individually form smaller, closer groups that are more oriented in the same way. This is what leads to that talk about national divorce, and people start going, well, how would that look? It wouldn't be a state against state thing. You're talking about this would break down county to county and city to city. And that's because we've become so divided in today's day and age that there's a group of people that actually parrot and roll forward and say that there is no solution to this but getting rid of all guns. Now, if you watch things like Glenn Beck, Glenn has talked about the mask slipping off a long time ago. And yeah, I would say that I don't think they were wearing a very good mask anyway. There's a lot of us in the 2A that have been seeing this type of action coming, and we didn't expect it in Washington State of all places. We expected it, or I expected it, from places like California or New York or even Illinois. And what you have here is that this is more draconian than anything in those other states. Those other states, you can jump through hoops to go through compliance to get kind of a semi-automatic or a modern-day rifle. In this, there is none of that. You register them. If you have them, you're grandfathered in to keep them until you pass away. They cannot be imported anymore into the state of Washington. So there's some international commerce law type stuff that they're going to have to get through to get that working. And they're going to go after ammunition in the same vein. Now, this is a blueprint for national design on what they're trying to do. You can see that in that they've already tried to pass bans on, or by fiat, bans on pistol braces. And with the increased focus on quote-unquote mass shooting events and not actually looking at the causes of said shooting events, nor looking at the causes of the crime spike statistics, and not realizing that there's a A-B correlation here. You can't have a gun doesn't just kill someone or go create this horrific act. It has to be put in the hands of someone. Same thing with crime. The gun didn't do the crime. The person did the crime. And there's so many people that are getting close to that connection, and you're seeing it in media right now as they're jumping through hoops to talk about the shootings that have been happening, and they keep dancing around that one thing, that it's the person, not the gun, and that these keep happening in, gun-free zones. You can't take a gun-free zone, and, a lot of us in the 2A have been talking about this for years. I've mentioned several times about what's happened in my life with having to go through the aftermath of a school shooting and during the school shooting and all that other fun stuff that's associated with that. It's the media aftermath that is one of the most damning things that happens in this scenario, because what happens is they're not on your side, no matter how much you tell the story. If it doesn't have enough of a high enough casualty count, the story goes away. If you look at the stuff that happened in Tennessee, because the shooter didn't fit the narrative that they had in their mind, it's now being memory hold. The same thing happens when the cops screw up. If you look at what happened last Wednesday in Farmington, New Mexico, where they killed an innocent homeowner by going to the wrong address, that's been memory hold too. The story's basically dead here locally even. And it's damn tragic. There's a lot of people that are still trying to keep it alive, because I do believe that these law enforcement agents need to be held to a higher standard. They're the ones that took the oath, and these guys are the ones that we're paying to protect us. And yet that's not the case anymore. In fact, this person did everything right, in my opinion, except for opening the door and walking out the screen door with a firearm. That probably is what got him killed. I still believe firmly that he responded in kind because somebody pounded at his door at 11:30 on a Wednesday in a very, very rural area. But I digress. Agents of the state will enforce this, in Washington specifically. Washington has settled lawsuits with the people of the CHOP, and they've gotten paid money because they didn't do their job. And they were okay with letting things slide into that type of chaotic scenario. If you look at the West Coast right now, you see crime statistics and you're going, holy crap, and you wonder why. Well, they're all a gun-free zone. I mean, those states literally have become a place where you cannot carry to defend yourself unless you're someone of rich privilege. And then you still have some hoops to jump through even then. So I can see why states like mine and California and Washington are emptying out. I'm not going to lie. If I ever made it big enough or my business makes it successful enough to where I can, I probably will leave the state finally for the first time in my life. Like move out completely ever. I always think that New Mexico's home. I would like to stay in New Mexico, but things aren't getting any better. And it's not just in New Mexico. It seems to be pretty indicative of anywhere that there's that blue wall. There are statists that only look at one thing and go, well, it's the gun, so we have to go after it. Not looking at the mental health issues and the other issues they have, economic issues that are contributing to the factors to the spiral they're seeing in their society, in our society. It's heartbreaking to see our culture devolve this rapidly to where it's at. But, it is what it is. And it's kind of, we're getting to that point where there's not a hell of a lot we can do other than peacefully not comply and hope that there's not enough of them to come to us and take what little bit of freedom we have. It's looking like, to me, that there are agents of the state, specifically law enforcement agencies like the FBI, that have been weaponized against the average citizen. I mean, also in the news, if you hadn't heard, if you've ever used the word Chad or Trad or blue pill or red pill, you've heard me say it on this podcast before. We're on a list now of to be watched. Now, I'm pretty sure I've always been on a list, at least since I was 18. So I'm not too overly worried about it. But I do think it's tragic that we have a list in the United States where we're supposed to be one of the freest countries on planet Earth. And that's no longer the case. And you look at other things that are going on in society and you go, yeah, they absolutely will weaponize this and use this against you. And it's because I don't believe the way they do. And most of us don't. And that's where we have the problem. I still believe in American hard work and sweat will get you where you want to go if you have the motivation to get there. I still believe that there is a system in place that there is some success if you're motivated. It's interesting that along those same lines, I'm having to learn to be very patient because I'm very motivated to do what I want to do in my business, but I'm also learning and expanding to make my podcast as good as I can. I have a new goal that eventually one of these days I'm going to end up on Timcast. I'd like to be there just because I think it would make a milestone, and it would maybe I'd get to tell the man how much his cast has meant to me, going through all the crap I've had to go through with my father dying, my mother dying, the COVID crap, and having to deal with that being kind of isolated and alone. There's a lot of us in the world that have, that's it. Our families separated us in different places. And while I have kids, they're all of the adult age, they're not always around me. And while I do have plenty of friends to reach out and talk to, it's kind of weird when adults just reach out to some weird one of your friends and it's not necessarily weird, but it's always felt weird and inconsistent for me. I don't believe you need to do that anyway. And I believe that you can make your own bones and make your own stripe if you're willing to do it, willing to work hard. you have to have a backbone, and that's where I don't understand the movement nowadays. And when I say the movement, the anti-government movement, the guys that are actually care about society, where our spine has went. I mean, we've been fighting this fight for a long time, those of us in that community. I thought I could fight it from the conservative side just to see that the conservatives were pretty much the same thing eventually. And that's where I'm at now politically, is because this stuff keeps happening, and there's no way around it. But I can comply or I can't, or I won't. And that's what free men do, is we make our own individual decisions based on our own moral compass. And it's not just men, it's women too. We look at this stuff, is this morally right? Is this morally just? How come no more of our culture think about that? Why is it only a select few that think about, is this morally right? Should I be worried about doing this? Should I screw over another human being just so I can get whatever I want? Now, part of that is human nature. And human nature is one of those most driving things that keeps us all alive, right? But we cannot allow the agents of the state to get this powerful to where they can rule over you with life and death, and there's no repercussions for them. And I wonder if those people in Washington are so blinded by what they see in mass media that they're willing to surrender all their last bit of freedoms. Because when this domino falls for them, there is nothing left that's going to stop them from having them take anything else away from you. Like, share, subscribe, be great.